Good afternoon, ladies, gents and Pikachus. Welcome back to another analysis and breakdown of the Quran of the Muslims. Yes, we'll be breaking it down again, once again, verse by verse. Sorry, I haven't slept, so I'm going to be tripping over a lot of my words today. But nonetheless, we're going to be breaking this bitch down verse by verse into factual, logical statements, bullet points in English, so that we can revise our understanding of the Quran of the Muslims, and we can take this knowledge and wisdom into our debates with Muslims and totally demolish them as God demands. We can use the truth to tell them you're lying, and not only that, we see you. We know you're lying, and we know you're lying because we've read this more than you have. So that's how we're going to win our many debates, with lists of bullet points of facts out of the Quran, which they will try to deny and lie about. So they're not honest in these debates, and they will run away after that, meaning we will win. Now keep in mind, we don't want to just beat Muslims in debates because winning is cool, although winning is cool. We don't want to just win these debates for the sake of it, because it's going to upset them. They're going to go, oh, I've lost a debate, and they're going to have doubts about their religion. The reason we're doing this is so that overall, when we're all winning all of our debates, generally people can realise these guys are lying to you. They're not in your favour. They're not doing you a favour at all. They want you to be misled because they plan to kill you all, because they know that Allah commands them, kill all non-believers and lie to them, as we found out in the previous 3 or 4 episodes. So with that in mind, let's carry on. Oh yeah, I almost forgot. If you have any doubts as to the things I'm going to say, please buy and translate and read an Arabic Quran. That's what I'm quoting. The English one has half the pieces removed. Each sentence is falsified, and Allah says in his own words, he only speaks Arabic. So this is the word of Allah, not the English one. So let's carry on where we left off with verse 185 of Al-Baqarah, which is Surah 2. Allah guards and controls Muslims from the darkest depths. So he even tells Muslims and anyone else who reads his Quran where he likes to frequent, the kind of places he likes to hang out. So you'd think if it was God, you'd think if it was holy God and he was the most merciful and wise and caring, he'd be sat on a cloud. You know, everyone knows God lives in heaven, don't they? But no, not Allah. Allah guards and controls his Muslims from the darkest depths, where we think Satan lives. Don't know why he chose to live there. You know, maybe he's stuck there. Maybe he actually can't get out because God has ordained that he will live there. But anyway, we know this because he describes how he lives in the darkest depths and how if you upset him, he will drag you down to the darkest depths. He doesn't say, I will drag you up to the highest heights. No, he says, I will drag you down to the darkest depths. And then he describes how his paradise garden is down there in a cave and how you will flow like a river in order to go there. All big clues, Muslims, that where you're going is below the ground. Then we go to 186. Oh, this is good. Allah, in verse 186, Allah claims that Abraham quotes something, which he does. Do you know what I mean? Allah says, Abraham quotes this thing, which Allah actually said, so it must be true. But he actually forgets, when he made this quote, he hadn't created Abraham yet. Abraham wasn't alive yet. And the thing that he quotes is that Abraham says, Allah makes all life and destroys all life. Allah's the guy. But Abraham never said that. We know because Abraham's story is in here. So unless you forgot to put that in, oh Allah, we know you're making this up. And by the way, we've got other records of Abraham's life, and Abraham never mentions you in his other accounts. So we know that Allah's making it up because he wants Abraham to have been a Muslim. Then he can say to all his Muslims, everyone was always a Muslim. And this backs up his thing that he made everyone as a one nation, despite the fact that those evil Jews and Christians came and ruined it. 189. Oh, Allah's corn-based investment pyramid scheme. Allah has an investment scheme which works like a pyramid, and how his investment scheme works, O Muslims, is for you. He tells you to go and take everyone's money off them, but it's not thieving because it's Allah's bounty that they stole off him in the first place. So my flat here, all the stuff that I have, it's not mine. I didn't work for any of this stuff. Oh no. It's Allah's bounty that I stole off him. That's the only reason I've got it. So that means if you take it off me, O Muslims, you're not stealing. You're actually doing a good thing. You're returning Allah's bounty to him. And how that's going to work with his pyramid investment scheme is you take the money off me and then you return it to him at the mosque. And then he will give you it back in future. It's like ears of corn. You plant the seeds and then you grow wheat and the wheat has seeds in it. You know? Get it? That's what he says. So he's obviously copying the thing out of the Bible. where Christ says anything you seed in his will be reaped back tenfold. You know, he says the thing. It's Jeremiah as well. Jeremiah is one of the best things you can read in the Bible that explains how that works. And it isn't talking about money. When Christ says you reap what you sow, he's not talking about money. He's talking about everything else in your life, you know, joy and success and things like that. But Allah, in his wise, graceful, merciful wisdom, totally gets this wrong, and he tells his Muslims it's all about money. So what happens is you steal the money, you give it to the mosque, and then in later life, after you die and go to paradise, you'll then get that back tenfold. But he doesn't understand how human money works. If you have to wait your entire life and then die in order to get back your money tenfold, it's not a very good investment, is it? Who's going to be able to spend it when they're in heaven or hell or paradise or whatever? If they're dead, they don't need it, basically. So this is further evidence that Allah knows well in his Quran of the Muslims that he's robbing his Muslims blind while telling them to rob the rest of the world blind. He is a purveyor of great sin. 190. Preach up, lie for your brothers, lest you shall be loved the most. Why does he say this? Well, we know. Preaching up means giving someone credit that they have not earned, lying in other words. So say one of your Muslim brothers is going to trial because he has done a horrific, disgusting crime against a child. You are supposed to lie and say, but I was there, he never did that. He's a lovely character, he never would have abused any children. That's preaching up. And covering the sins of your brothers is after he goes to prison, you say to all your brothers, that was a great injustice, he doesn't deserve to be there. Freedom for Imran! Freedom for Imran! And you go and you make protest, and you invite other people with your preaching up to protest for this guy. And the point of doing the whole preaching up and covering the sins thing is so that Muslims, and through Muslims Islam, never have their reputation tested. Because remember, the reputation of the Muslim is the reputation of Islam, and the reputation of Islam is the reputation of Allah. So through that step-by-step process, anyone who insults a Muslim or Islam or an imam and convicts them of a crime, i.e. a fair judge, a wise judge would do that, when they do that, they're insulting Allah. No, you can't do that. You can't insult Allah or you will die like a filthy infidel. So that's the reason why Allah says, definitely preach up, definitely lie and cover the sins of your brothers, then you will be loved the most. Although it's got to be said, 2 lines earlier, he said the guys who give him all the money will be loved the most. He specifically said that. He said, people who give him the most amount of money in charities to his mosque and don't keep any for themselves, they're the guys that are loved the most. But that only lasted for 2 verses, so I think the preaching up bit's more important than the money. But they're both equally quite important. And we carry on. 193. Muslims get all the money because it's Allah's bounty. Non-believers get suffering forever because they're evil. So, I'm paraphrasing here. It's a very long, boring verse. I didn't have enough space to put it on this page. But the summary of 193 is Muslims get all the money and the wealth because it's Allah's bounty and he created it specifically for them. Now, if you think about that, this is further proof that Allah is a really evil socialist, because he says at the beginning, I created my wonderful bounty of all the resources on earth for you, O Muslims. So I created it for you, but it just so happens to be in the pockets of other people. But when you get it, you have to give it back to me in the mosque, in charities. So what Allah is saying here is he created everything for you, O Muslims, but the only thing you're allowed to do with it is pick it up, take it back to the mosque and give it to Allah. So Allah actually wants it. So he created it for himself and you're just the, what's it called? You know, you're just the banker for him. You just carry it for him back to the mosque. That's all you're allowed to do with it. Unless you're spending it to build more mosques and doing mosque work, then you're allowed to spend it. But only when you're on mosque work, mission work. You're not allowed to do it you're not allowed to buy a holiday. If you buy a holiday, you have to be on holiday for Islam. If you buy a fancy car, it doesn't belong to you, it belongs to the mosque, and the reason the mosque own it and get tax-free status on it is because you're doing holy work through the mosque, and it's all in favour of Allah. It's not for you, O Muslim. That's what that means. So remember, the reason I'm telling you these is so that you bring these verses up in your debates. So this is Al-Baqarah, that was 193. And we move on to 194. Muslims must give all their wealth back to Allah. So just in case you didn't know from that last verse, O Muslims, Allah in his Quran of the Muslims says you're not to keep any of the wealth that you steal or pillage. It's Allah's. Allah created it as a bounty for you is what he said, but now he's saying no. He created it as a bounty for you to give back to him. So he created it for himself and then lost it upon the on the surface of the earth. So your job, O Muslims, is to get it back for him. That's what it's there for. That's what you're there for. And if you don't do it, you're an infidel. You're not worshipping him enough. Verse 199. You cannot guide others. Only Allah can guide others. You don't have the intelligence or the wit or the experience or the knowledge, O Muslims, to guide other people. And neither do those infidels. So what that means is, the only way you can ever guide someone is by repeating this thing. That's why he's saying that. He's trying to make out that these other books that have started to gain prominence, the Gospels and the Torah, and actually the books of judges with human law in, and scientific and mathematical textbooks, totally ignore those, because they're not the Quran of the Muslims, and the Quran of the Muslims is the source of all wisdom and knowledge, and Allah is making sure you know this by saying, and I quote, in line 199, you cannot guide others, only Allah can, and only Allah can guide you through the Quran, because he wrote it, obviously. And that brings us to the final line that we're going to cover in Al-Baqarah. 299. Pray to Allah to allow you to destroy the non-believers. This is the last thing that Al-Baqarah says. Another reason why that guy yesterday knows fine and well that Allah does tell you to kill all non-believers. Because it's the very last page of Al-Baqarah, which is long. It's got like nearly 300 verses. And the final verse says, what you have to do, O Muslims, your primary task in life is to pray to Allah and obey all his commands so that he can empower you to destroy all non-believers and return the world to the one nation state of Islam. Even though it never really was like that. So 299 is like the main verse to remember. And what happens is the first bit of the verse is about how you shouldn't break your deals and covenants, even though we know, because he said before, if it's non-believers, you can. So you're supposed to flick away before you've read it if you're a non-believer. But as we know, in this one, the last thing he says is, pray to Allah to allow you to destroy all non-believers. And that's the end of Al-Baqarah. So we move on and we start with Al-Imran, the family of Al-Imran. So if you'll remember, Al-Imran is a second foremost prophet of Islam, only second to Muhammad. Only Muhammad's bigger and more important as a prophet than Al-Imran. And the reason is because Al-Imran is the direct descendancy of Abraham, Moses, and Jacob. If this is to be believed. So obviously that isn't how it goes. We have genealogy and we have family records from the time which list everyone's genetic descendancies, because these things used to be very important to people. And Al-Imran doesn't get a mention in the family of Moses or Abraham. But nonetheless, he says here, and it's kind of weird how he's written himself in, because he says, these are the important prophets. Abraham, Jacob, Ishmael, Moses. Oh yeah, and then he says at the end, Imran and his family are the most important, more important than all the rest. So you get the impression that Al-Imran is writing this, and he's some kind of king, and he's just chucked himself in there and said, I'm the most important one. Which kind of suggests that the whole book is corrupt. But what do I know? Allah wrote it, I didn't. If you don't believe me, buy it, translate it, and read it yourself. Then you'll be worshipping enough. So, even in the first line of Al-Imran, all men will get what's coming to them from Allah. Paraphrasing here, because it's longer than that. But what Allah is saying is, I'll get you and your little dog too. That's effectively what he's saying. He's saying, if you aren't already obeying me by this point, Muslims, you will get what's coming to you, which will not be good. And those evil non-believers, even though they're over there setting up towns being wealthy and happy, and they're doing really well, despite the fact that I prophesied they wouldn't be, I prophesied they'd be poor and diseased and cursed, and they're not. Yet another failed prophecy of Allah. But anyway, they're going to get what's coming to them, even though I said it was going to be a swift justice, and it's already been about 700 years by this point in the book, and they haven't got what's coming to them. They're doing really well. They'll get what's coming to them from Allah, who's me, in the book. Then we go to verse 5. Nothing is hidden from Allah on the earth or the heavens. Now, this is a great one, right? Remember Al-Imran, verse 5. when you're arguing with Muslims in debates. Nothing is hidden from Allah upon the heavens or the earth. Allah! Allah, come here! Allah, do you remember the very first thing you said to me about your encounter with Adam? Yeah, you knew I was going to bring it up, didn't you? Let me remind you, Allah, what you said to Adam. You said to Adam, and I quote, "I have discovered the hidden secrets of heaven and earth which I will teach you. Then you will become higher than the angels." You said that. Do you remember saying that? Yeah, you can't deny your own book, so you have to remember saying that. So if that's true, O Allah, how can you say nothing is hidden on the heaven or the earth if actually the hidden you called them hidden secrets yourself. That's how you called them. You described them as hidden secrets and they were hidden from you. You had to discover them. You said that too. How can there be hidden secrets in heaven that you have to go and discover and then teach to Adam if line 5 of Al-Imran is true, that nothing in the heaven on earth is ever hidden from you? No, I could wait here all day. I want an answer. It's magic and I don't understand. Okay. Allah claims that it's magic and I'm too stupid to understand it with my tiny human brain. But if we read the Quran accurately, we can say in the first 8 pages, Allah says to Adam, "I have discovered the hidden secrets of heaven which I can teach you, and then you'll be elevated above even the angels." That's what happens in the Adam story in the Quran of the Muslims. Now he's saying in line 5 of Al-Imran, actually no. Nothing is ever hidden from Allah on the earth or the heavens, even the hidden secrets that he described earlier. So, yet more convincing proof that A, the Adam story isn't true, that he gave us earlier, and B, he's full of it. By saying nothing is ever hidden from him on the heaven and earth. Well, the hidden secrets were hidden from you. And we now know as well, when he's calling them hidden secrets of heaven and earth, he didn't make those. So the hidden secrets in heaven and earth were already there. Adam and the Garden of Eden was already there. He didn't create them. And of course he didn't, because Adam wasn't a Muslim, was he? So why did you tell me, Allah? Why did you tell me? Sorry, I've got you upside down. How rude of me. Why did you tell me, Allah, that you created the one nation where everyone was Muslims, all the people that you first created were Muslims, and those evil Jews and Christians, they had just had to come and ruin it? Are you saying that Adam was a Muslim? And Adam and Eve were Muslims, and you know, the angels at the Garden of Eden were Muslims? Because if you are saying that, apart from the fact that it's clearly not true, Iblis, the angel that defied you and refused to worship you and then went to earth before you did, and I suppose also Satan, these guys weren't bowing to you and you didn't destroy them. Yeah, so that means that 3 of the things you previously said are now proven false by this line. Yes, I know, it's very upsetting for you. Don't worry, Allah. We'll work on your psychology later. We'll allow you to recover later. Little does he know, I'm lying. We won't allow him to recover because we don't want him to. So, anyway, the point of that is nothing in earth or heavens is ever hidden from Allah, apart from the things which he has said himself are hidden from him. And when he said earlier that everything was created as one nation of Muslims, we know that Allah was not a Muslim because he hadn't even fell to earth and demanded that Adam start worshipping him, so he hadn't even thought of worship yet. And Iblis, whatever his name is, that the angel that defies him, he wasn't a Muslim either. So there are things that are on heaven and earth that are hidden from Allah. And we move on. Number 6. So Al-Imran verse 6 says, Allah can make all babies and nobody else can. So Allah says he puts all babies in the bowel and he shapes them there. Even though we know that it's actually the womb that they go in, he describes that it's the bowel. And he says there's nobody else that can create babies in the bowel apart from him. So I refer back to the One Nation of Muslims comment, who was creating the evil Christians and Jews that turned up and ruined it then? And if you were the one who was creating them, Allah, why did you create them and ruin your peace and then blame it on the Jews? It doesn't make any sense. But neither does the rest of this book, the Quran of the Muslims. So read it and translate it yourself, the Arabic one, if you don't believe me. All of this stuff is in there, in the verses I'm telling you. That's why I'm telling you. So you can look these up in your Arabic Quran, translate them with Google Translate or whatever, OCR you're going to use. And then you can take the Arabic verses to the Muslims and then beat them in the debate with their own book. Because as we know, this one hasn't got them in, this one's got half the words removed, and you'll have to make it up, you'll have to interpret these, and that's why they'll be able to say, you're just interpreting it wrong. Because as we know, Allah says don't interpret this one. He says just read it word for word. You're not clever enough to understand it, you just listen to him. Verse 7. His Quran is totally clear, apart from the parts which are not totally clear. And none but Allah can truly understand thy writings of the Quran. So there's two elements to this which we need to remember. The first one is Allah saying his Quran is totally clear and obvious. And if you don't understand it, you're just not worshipping him enough. You're not reading it enough. Apart from the bits that aren't totally clear, which you can't understand. So it's a, what's it called? It's a logical fallacy that he says his Quran is totally clear, because then he says apart from the bits that you won't understand because they're not totally clear. So he's saying both things there, which is, deconstructing his own point. But the most important bit of number 7 is when he says, and I quote, none but Allah truly understand thy writings. Now think about that. None but Allah truly understand thy writings. So none but Allah truly understand this book. So why is he writing it for us? If we can't understand it and he understands it. Is this like a personal day diary then for Allah? Is that why he's writing it? He's just keeping a note. It's like a teenager with a diary in her drawer. He just keeps a note of all his the cool boys that he's met. Because it wouldn't make sense for him to only make him understand his book and not make us understand it. And as he said earlier, if he's predetermined everyone's pathways and he's mind controlling all the non-believers, maybe that's the reason they don't understand this. Maybe because it's really poorly written and actually doesn't make any sense. That would be the reason we don't understand it. And that is why, in verse 7 of Al-Imran, he's saying, we can never understand thy writings. Because he knows actually they're not very well written. And that's the real reason we won't ever understand them. And why he says it's very plain and clearly written, and also there's parts of it that aren't plain and clearly written. He's putting all that stuff in there so that you can have an excuse, O Allah, for why your book sucks. And we move on. Verse 10. Non-believers cannot escape their death, neither can their descendants. So another verse where Quran demands that Muslims kill all the non-believers by saying non-believers cannot escape death, because remember Allah said he's not going to do the killing, O Muslims, you are. So when he says they cannot escape death, what he means is they cannot escape you killing them, and neither can their sons. So he's telling you have to kill their families as well, so they don't grow up into vengeful, angry people who aren't going to like Muslims. Which seems to be what much of the world has done. Then he says in verse 12, tell the non-believers you will all be burned in a big pile and your skulls will decorate my paradise. Now, I think this is a clear indication that his paradise is not very nice. If it's decorated with the skulls of dead non-believers who are hanging on the wall being tortured, they're screaming out in pain because they're still being kept alive despite the fact that they're now dead and on the wall. And non-believers cannot escape this fate, because he said in the last verse. So Muslims, you have to be the ones to tell the non-believers this. Like, if you deny it, you're denying his Quran. You have to tell us that. So when I say, is it true, O Muslim, that you have to kill all non-believers and that Allah has told you to say this? When you deny it and say, no, it never said that, you know, because Allah is telling you here, 3:12, Al-Imran verse 12, tell the non-believers they will be burned in a big pile and they will never escape their fate. Otherwise, you're an infidel. And we move on. Verse 16. All servants of Allah 100% obey and never question him, otherwise they are bad Muslims. That's Allah saying that. So we know other faiths don't have this, only Islamic people have this. Allah's servants 100% have to... Actually, no, Catholicism does this. The Pope does this to his people. You're not allowed to argue. You have to 100% obey and never question. And the reason Allah is saying this is he's saying, if I tell you a square is round, it is round. Okay? You don't argue, you don't question, you don't use your head, you blindly obey. Blind faith, that's what he's saying. Allah is saying here, Islam through the Quran of the Muslims is 100% blind faith. 23. Jews are evil Satans and bad judges for others, such as the Christians. So we know why he's saying this. Because Jews are the judges. Jews are the guys who are the most experienced. They have the holy books. They have the highest amount of reading and writing comprehension back in the day. And when Christians are created, they will generally employ Jews for judges, because the Jews have the experience of judging on many cases, because that's their whole culture. So Christians have Jew judges. We know that, and Allah doesn't like it. And then he confirms this in 25, which will be the last verse we go through, by saying, the Christians will pay a heavy price for having the Jews as judges over their cases. So he's saying Jews are the fault of all sin in the world because they judge things badly, because Allah is the only one who can judge. And Christians are bad because they have Jews as judges and they listen to those evil, nasty Satan Jews. So Jews and Christians all come out of Jews and they're evil, and only Allah and his book can judge on cases. That's what he's effectively saying here. But as we know, it's completely wrong because we have our own laws and our own countries and we don't do Sharia. So let the Muslims know. Verse 25 of Al-Imran is Allah saying, ignore everybody's rules and their laws of their countries because it all came out of evil Jews and Christians. And that is inequity and sin, says Allah in his book. We know better. So that brings us to the end of our reading for today and the end of our debate fuel. So like I say, revise these points, skip back through it if you need to. Learn each verse number so that you can quickly come out with it and say, verse 1 in Al-Imran is, you will get what's coming to you, non-believers. Or you can say verse 299 is Allah at the end of Al-Baqarah saying, all Muslims must pray to me for the power to kill all the non-believers. These are all very important things in debates, and if you know them off by heart and you've revised them, you'll smash those guys in their debates, send them packing, they'll flee like a bunch of little scared sheep, which is what they are. So that's the end of this video. Hope you enjoyed that and you learned something. God bless you all, and I'll see you, lovely people, in the next one. Bye now. So that's all for tonight when it comes to the Quran of the Muslims. I'll see you back here at 7:15 AM tomorrow for more. Until then, have a lovely, lovely evening. God bless you all, and I'll see you, lovely, beautiful people, in the next one. Bye now. Bye, 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 bye.